If you've ever looked into the world of 16mm motion picture film, you've probably come across a Bolex. These iconic Swiss-made cameras with their wind-up motors and their 3-lens turrets have long been a staple of the film industry. So I recently came across this. This is a Bolex H16 Reflex. This particular model is also known as a REX 5. So today I want to do a little bit of an overview about this camera and Bolexes in general, and then also share some footage that I recently shot with this. I was in the UK over the holidays and I took this camera with me and a couple rolls of Kodak 250D, and I just figured it'd be a good place to test it out, have some fun, and just shoot some initial film through this camera. And one other thing I want to note just quickly, I'll go into more detail later, but I did have this camera converted to Super 16 from regular 16. If you don't know the difference, I will talk about that after. But that's another thing you can do with these that just makes them even that more unique. So nowadays, Super 8 is definitely getting more popular, and there's a lot of people showing interest in shooting on motion picture film. But if you're looking to step up to 16mm and want to try it out, a Bolex is probably going to be your best option, just because, in my opinion, they're the perfect mix of price versus quality. They're definitely not the cheapest option out there, but they're pretty close to it, and they're definitely precision built and have a lot of awesome features. And on top of that, there's a lot of them out there, so you're not really gonna have that much trouble trying to find one. Bolex started making cameras in the 30s, most notably 16mm cameras that are spring-driven and take 100-foot rolls of film. Most came with a 3-lens C-mount turret that you simply rotate to change lenses, although they did have options for a bayonet mount in the later years. So when it comes to models, there's a bunch of different options out there, just as the camera evolved throughout the years. And if you're looking to purchase one of these, it can get a little bit confusing just because you'll see options available anywhere from a couple $100 all the way up to thousands of dollars. So a really good resource to check out is bolexcollector.com. On that website, it basically has a chart with all the different years, when the models were released and what features were added and what makes them different from previous ones. So really good resource to check out. Today though, I will give a quick overview of the lineup, and then I'm going to talk about the version that I ended up with and why I chose this one. So the early model Bolexes all the way up until about the 50s were non-reflex models. And what that means is that they usually had a viewfinder that was located on the side here. And when you look through the viewfinder, you're not actually looking through the lens, you're just looking through a frame that kind of approximated the focal length of whichever chosen lens you had. And for me, I'm not really a fan of that at all, so finding a reflex version was an absolute must. And obviously the difference with a reflex version is that when you look through the viewfinder here, you're looking through a series of mirrors and prisms and then through the actual lens itself. So when it comes to framing, it's way more accurate. So for me, that was a must. So the camera that I found came with the C-mount turret system, which I'm fine with. I didn't really have a preference. I would take either this or the bayonet. It came with 2 lenses. One of them is this Schneider 75mm, which is a telephoto. A little bit of a slower lens. This one, it's a 3.8. I don't know how much I'll use that, but it did come with this Kern 26mm f1.1 macro, which is from my understanding, a pretty rare lens and a really, really beautiful lens. So I'm really excited about this. All of the footage that was shot for this video was shot using this lens. So at the time when Bolexes were sold, they were always sold as regular 16mm cameras. And for those of you who aren't too familiar with 16mm film, regular 16 has roughly a 4:3 aspect ratio. When it comes to Super 16, cameras still use the same film as regular 16. The only difference is that the film gate is wider, so you're actually exposing a wider portion of the film, kind of out to the edges where the soundtrack used to be recorded on 16mm film. And this brings the frame size closer to 16:9 instead of 4:3, so it became very popular. The only thing is nowadays finding Super 16mm cameras for sale is getting a lot more difficult and a lot more expensive. So the neat thing with the Bolex cameras is that the reflex versions can be converted to Super 16 quite easily, and there's a lot of people out there who are doing conversions. You can actually still send your camera off to the Bolex factory in Switzerland and they'll convert it for you. I would assume that's probably the most expensive option. I sent my camera away to a company in Montreal, and they converted it for about $700 Canadian, which is really cheap when you factor in the total cost after purchasing a camera and getting it converted. I think for me, I did get a really good deal on this camera, but if you were to purchase a REX 5 for the going rates right now, get it converted to Super 16 and get it serviced, you could probably be under the $2,000 mark easily, which is quite a bit cheaper than the other options out there on the market today. When it comes to the why behind shooting on 16mm, for me at least, I really believe that motion picture film has a look that can't be completely replicated. Just the way that the highlights roll off, the grain structure, the way that motion is rendered, all of these characteristics just kind of make up this look that really is timeless. You know, obviously shooting on film is expensive, and it's only getting more expensive. In Canadian dollars, I think a 100-foot roll of 16mm film is around the $60 mark right now. And you're probably around $150 to get it developed and scanned after that. So you're probably around the $200 to $250 mark for 100 feet of film, and that gives you 2.5 minutes of runtime. So it's expensive. But with that being said, I think it's a really neat option to use for some projects, maybe not shooting a whole project on it, but just to use and get creative with, and you know, just to have some fun with it. If you're interested in shooting on 16, my advice is just go and look for one of the non-reflex versions, pick one up for a couple $100, buy a roll of film, run it through it, and just see how you like it, and go from there if it's a medium that you think you want to work with moving forward. As always, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. If you're not following me on Instagram, my link's in the description below. Until next time, thank you guys. Appreciate you guys watching. We'll see you soon.